So today we will discuss the themes of the Lion and the Jewel. The Lion and the Jewel is a very remarkable text, and it is written by Ole Soyinka, a Nigerian writer. And this text is remarkable for different themes. It is not based on a singular theme. It has got multifarious or different layers of meanings and significance. And we can read this text from different perspectives. We can read this text from the perspective of colonialism. We can read this text from the perspective of gender issue, or we can also read this text from the perspective of cultural conflict. So this text invites our attention to different aspects of African society. That is the African society which was experiencing colonial trauma. And you know that this text is based on different themes. At first, I just like to let you know different themes of this text. And then I will tell you about some other things or some other aspects of this text. So look at this screen. The main theme of this text is conflict. The main theme of this text is conflict between African culture and Western culture. And Africanism, it's also a very important theme of this text. Then colonialism is another important theme of this text. And while you will recite this text, you may feel that it is a love story, the love affair which is going on between Sidi and Lakunle. Actually, this is not a love story, and Ole Soyinka is not a man to write a comedy with such a superficial subject matter. Ole Soyinka is a serious writer. And you know that for his literary works, he won the Nobel Prize in 1986. And his treatment of African subject matters and his response to the British colonialism, or even his response to the post-colonial realities. All these things have drawn the attention of the international readership. And Ole Soyinka has become not only for the Africans, he has become a writer for the international readership, because the issues that he has brought out or brought to the attention of the readers have got international importance. The issue, for example, the cultural conflict that I have already told you, one of the themes of this text, that is conflict between African culture and Western culture. So it's a very common theme or common issue all over the world. In the globalizing world, we find the hybridity of culture. In our culture, we find the amalgamation or mixture or fusion of different cultures. We are Bangladeshis, but we accommodate English culture. We accommodate the culture of the people of other religion. For example, there are many things in our culture that have come from Hindu culture, that have also come from Christian cultures. So we find a mixture of different cultures in our culture. So modern age is an age of cultural hybridity. And Ole Soyinka has realized it very well, and he has depicted the problem of cultural fusion, or the synthesis of different cultures in a single spot or space. How this cultural fusion or hybridity creates confusion to the followers or to the natives. This is one of the themes of this text. And then you will find Africanism. Africanism means the Africans should be Africans in their attitude, in their culture, in their language, and in their taste. Suppose we are Bangladeshis. So Bangladeshism is our identity. So what does this term mean or signify, Bangladeshism? This term signifies that we have to be Bangladeshi in our identity, in our nationality, in our taste, in our attitude. So we should develop an individual way of life that will suit our Bangladeshi identity. That is called Bangladeshism. So Africanism means the identity of the Africans, or the signia of the Africans, or the label or brand of the Africans that will identify them to be Africans to the rest of the world. Then colonialism is another important theme of this text. So what is colonialism? Actually, colony means farm. Colonia is a Latin term, and from that very term, colonialism or colonization or colony, these words have derived from colonia, the Latin word. Colonia means farm, suppose agricultural farm. But in political science, colonialism, or this very term, has got some special implications. It has got different dimensions of interpretations. Colonialism means the attempt of a country to go to another country under the subterfuge of trades and commerce, and gradually they will capture the sovereign power of the country, or gradually they will capture the government of the country, and they will exercise political power. They will impose their jurisdiction. They will impose their administration upon the people of that very place. That is called colonialism. Suppose in our country, in India, that is, if you think of our history before 1947, we find the same practice done by East India Company in this India. That is, they came here initially under the subterfuge of trades and commerce. But very soon, they started taking a hand in our political affairs. And ultimately, you know that in 1757, Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowla was defeated in the Battle of Palashi, and that was the beginning of political power or political domination of East India Company. And ultimately, in 1857, while Sepoy Mutiny took place, the British government thought that the political power of such a huge land should not be at the hand of a company, East India Company. So ultimately, Queen Victoria took up the political power or authority of India, and she became the Queen of India also. Okay, and the rest of the events of our political history, we know how they exploited us, how they killed us, how they oppressed us, persecuted us, and enslaved us. All these things belong to colonialism. Actually, colonial practice is a practice of domination. It does never believe in friendship. It believes in submission and domination. Submission on the part of the natives and domination on the part of the colonizers. They believe in domination and submission. They do never believe in friendship. And you know it very well if you read the famous novel, A Passage to India by E.M. Forster. You will find the same theme there, that friendship is never possible between the master and the servant. If the master pretends to be a friend of a servant, then you must suspect it. You have so many chances to suspect that very approach of your master. Anyway, you know that colonialism in Africa started, or it became very active from 1870. And this colonial practice continued till 1960, because most of the African countries achieved liberty by 1960s. So this very period, that is 30 years of 19th century and 60 years of 20th century, that is the first half of 20th century. These 90 years was a very dark episode or phase of the history of Africa. This 90 years is the episode of colonialism in Africa. Now, if you think the reason behind this European colonial enterprise in Africa, then you will find that in 1833, British Parliament passed an act. It was an act of abolition of slavery. That is, slavery was abolished in the British Parliament in 1833. So while the slavery was abolished, then the British people, especially British, Portuguese, and French, who were the colonizers in Africa, they concentrated then on the accumulation of raw materials of their mills and factories. That is, the mills and factories or industries that they established in their countries required raw materials. Suppose they wanted to produce a cigarette. So for cigarette, they needed tobacco. And for tobacco, they went to Africa. Suppose they wanted to produce gear oil for their automobiles. And for that reason, they needed palm oil. So for palm oil, they went to Africa. Suppose they wanted to produce soap. And for that reason, they needed the raw material of palm oil. And palm oil was abundantly available in Africa. So they went to Africa. Okay. These are some of the examples. So they went to Africa, but they did not collect all these things in a congenial atmosphere. They started accumulating all these things through persecution, through oppression, through torture. And that was the practice of colonial enterprise. That is, colonialism did never believe in friendship, or colonialism did never believe in mutualization or reciprocation. Colonialism is always a one-sided domination or dominating practice. It did never believe in reciprocation. That is, they went to Africa, they exercised power, they tortured the people, they compelled them to collect all these materials and sell to them in very low price or cheap price. And they took all these materials to their country and they accumulated capital. That was their purpose. And while doing this commercial enterprise, then they imposed their culture or cultural features upon the local people. And that very practice was not done overnight, or at first or initially they did not apply force upon the people. They approached the people with their religion, that is, with Christianity. They approached the people with Christianity. And they set up hospitals there. They set up churches there. They set up schools there. And they invited the people to come to their schools and to be acquainted with education. They proclaimed that the Africans were uncivilized. They proclaimed that the Africans did not have any culture. They did not have any history. They did not have any literature. So they invited the Africans, the local Africans, to come to their schools and receive Western education. Okay, so the people went to their schools out of curiosity. Many people went to schools, and there they started receiving their education. Actually, you must not think that the Europeans had a benevolent purpose of educating the people. Their purpose was that, suppose they ran business there, so they needed some clerks to maintain their accounts. They needed some people who would understand their language. They wanted some people who would carry their orders. Now, for creating this section of people, for creating clerks, for creating their orderlies, for creating their messengers, they gave them their education. You must not think that they were educating the Africans to make them gentlemen or to make them equally important people. It was not their purpose. Their purpose was to produce a group of or a section of people who would understand their language, who would carry on their commands, or who would preserve their accounts. So they wanted to produce a group of clerks, not gentlemen with equal status of the Europeans. Remember this. Okay. And they became very successful. And many Africans received their education. And in this drama, Lakunle, whom we find as a school teacher, is one of them. Lakunle also received their education. He also assumed their dress pattern or dress code. He also speaks the language of the colonizers, and he dreams of modernization that the Europeans have provided him. So Lakunle is not a gentleman. He does never share the equal status of an Englishman. He is just a mimic man. That is, he imitates European style, European way of life, but he is never European. In the eyes of the Europeans, he is never an equal. Actually, that was the colonial practice. Colonialism did never want that the natives should be their equals, the equals of the masters. Okay. I will discuss this topic more later. At first, I just like to tell you some other themes of this text. Yoruba culture. You know that in Africa, there are more than 3,000 ethnic groups of people. 3,000. In Bangladesh, we have 35 ethnic groups of people. In Bangladesh, suppose Marma, Mog, Chakma, so Murong, then Munipuri. These are the ethnic groups of people. Okay. In Bangladesh, at present, we have 42 sections or 42 ethnic groups of people. 42. And how many languages do we have in Bangladesh? In Bangladesh, we have 35 languages. I think most of you do not know this information. In Bangladesh, we have at present 35 languages and 42 ethnic groups of people. But in Africa, there are more than 3,000 ethnic groups of people. Just think of the diversity. And there are more than 2,000 languages. In Bangladesh, we have 35 languages, and we know only Bangla and English, probably. And some of you know Hindi, and some of you know Arabic or Urdu, and some other languages that remain out of these languages. We do not know. These languages are quite inscrutable to us. In Africa, there are more than 2,000 languages and more than 3,000 ethnic groups of people. And these 3,000 ethnic groups of people have their distinctive cultural pattern. They have their distinctive language. They have their distinctive way of life, their different gods and goddesses, their attitudes, their belief systems are also different. That is, belief system in one ethnic group is different from that of the other ethnic group. So Africa is just like a museum. If you go into a museum, you will find lots of things, and all the things are quite different from one another. So you will find diversity. It is just like a gallery where different things are arranged for display. Africa is just like a museum where you will find diversified things, diversified languages, diversified people, diversified belief systems. So one ethnic group does not match the other ethnic group. So we have their Yoruba, Igbo, Bantu, Pygmy, Hottentot. So different Fulani, so different ethnic groups you will find there. Okay. Ole Soyinka belonged to Yoruba culture, Yoruba ethnic group. He was from Yoruba, and I think You have also heard the name of Chinua Achebe, another Nigerian writer, world famous writer. He belonged to Igbo group, Igbo ethnic group. But Ole Soyinka belonged to Yoruba culture. So you will find the reflection of Yoruba culture in this text. Suppose the issue of bride price. It's a very important issue and an important practice that we find among the Yoruba people. And bride price is very, very important, and everybody who wants to marry must pay the bride price to the girl's father. Those who are rich will have to pay, suppose, 10 cows or 20 sheep, then 40 pots of palm wine, or 50 hens, or 20 goats. Okay, so these are the things, or these are the materials that are considered to be bride price, and the man who wants to marry must pay the bride price to the bride's father. And if a girl is beautiful, if the girl is virgin, then her bride price will be much more than the other girls. This is African practice, and we find this practice among the Yorubas, and we find it. And this very important aspect draws the reader's attention to think of the conflict between Lakunle and Sidi. Lakunle wants to marry Sidi, but Sidi claims her bride price. Lakunle does not want to pay the bride price because he says that it is an uncivilized practice. This practice belongs to an uncivilized society. He wants to marry Sidi following the Western marriage system. And he says that his wife, that is Sidi, will not be his property. He does not want to buy Sidi with bride price. And you know that it is very important. It's a very important aspect of this text, that is patriarchal social system. African social system is patriarchal social system. That is, father is all in all in a family. Father is all in all in a family, and mother usually does not have any say in decision making. And we find the reflection of this practice in the attitude of Lakunle. Lakunle wants to marry Sidi following Western system, marriage system. But at the same time, he believes that Sidi is not as wise as a man, and Sidi's brain is smaller than that of a man. So Lakunle is a bundle of contradictions. He is not fully westernized. While he says that he will not pay bride price, then he seems to be, or he sounds like a Western gentleman. But while he underestimates Sidi and says that Sidi's brain is smaller than that of a man, it is an African attitude towards a woman. So just mark that Lakunle is not a totally modern man. He is not totally embraced by Western modernism. He is a hybrid person. We find the hybridization of African culture or attitude and Western attitude. So he is not totally a westernized man. So this very dichotomy or contradiction that we find in Lakunle has made him a laughter-provoking character, a laughing stock. He has become a laughing stock. Actually, Siri also criticizes him. And the dress that Lakunle puts on is not totally a westernized dress. The dress does not fit his body. The size is smaller than the size that he needs. But he thinks that it is a fashion. It is the fashion of the day. So he is living in a utopia. Actually, he is chasing the illusion of Western modernism. But we find that he is disillusioned because we find a synthesis. We find a syncretic situation of cultures, of syncretic cultural amalgamation in his character. For that reason, Lakunle is a failure. And colonialism targets this Lakunle-like class of people in Africa or even in India. Colonialism did never want that the local people should be their equal in their taste, in their attitude, or in their way of life. They just wanted to create a hybridized, a divided self, an ambivalent self who will not be able to possess their local culture, neither the foreign culture. So they will sway between these two cultures or cultural realities. And the swaying between two different cultural realities will create a confused generation. And a confused generation can never form a systematic resistance against the colonizers. So that was the policy, or that was the objective of the colonizers. And they became successful. And we find the reflection of this project, colonial project, reflected in the character of Lakunle. He is a hybridized entity. Okay? Then another important theme, assimilation of global perception of culture. Ole Soyinka is not a bigoted writer, or he does never show his narrowness regarding his attitude towards different cultures or cultural hybridity. Ole Soyinka wanted that the Africans should receive the good aspects, whatever aspects are congenial for them, should be received by the Africans. And there should be an assimilation, that is combination between different cultures. Because we live in a globalized world, it is quite impossible to live in a segregated place. We can never segregate ourselves from the rest of the world. So there should be a synthesis. And we know that the world culture is a syncretized culture. The world culture is a culture where we find the elements of different cultures. For that reason, Ole Soyinka, just like a citizen of the world, just like a cosmopolitan, believes that we should have cultural mixture or hybridity. But one thing that we must not forget is that while we accumulate the foreign culture, or while we welcome foreign culture, we must not annihilate, or we must not exile our local culture by the imported foreign culture. That is very, very important. If we annihilate our local culture, then we will lose our cultural identity. You know that cultural identity is a must. Your culture is your identity. If you lose your culture, you will lose your identity. So Ole Soyinka just reminds his readers that assimilation is good, accommodation is. Soyinka has advised us that we may accommodate different cultures, but one thing that we must not forget, that our own culture or our cultural identity or individuality must not be sacrificed. Because if we lose our cultural identity, that will tell upon our own identity as a nation. That will also tell upon our nationalism. Nationalism is a very important driving force in the citizen that will help him think of his identity, think of his belonging, think of his location, cultural location, psychological location. So these are very important factors that are determined by our culture. For that reason, Ole Soyinka advises that, or he thinks that, cultural assimilation is not a problem unless and until the local culture or the originality of local culture is ensured. If the local culture is annihilated by the imported foreign culture, then that will tell upon the identity, nationality, or location, cultural location, psychological location of the natives. We find it very metaphorically depicted in this text, The Lion and the Jewel. Then another important theme is marginalization of women. I have already told you that Lakunle's attitude towards Siddhi is not congenial. He wants to marry Siddhi following Western system of marriage. He wants to enjoy a life that a young man in Western countries enjoys in company with his wife. But at the same time, he believes that Siddhi is not equal to him regarding her knowledge, regarding her wisdom, regarding her intelligence. So this is the reflection of patriarchal attitude towards women. And in African society, we find it. Even in our society, we must not make any mistake if we say that in our society today, we find such type of attitude towards women, though we have overcome a lot of things in this particular field. But it is also true that we could not overcome, or we cannot, or we have not overcome all the bigotry, parochialism, or prejudices regarding our women. Okay. Anyway, marginalization of women, this is another theme of The Lion and the Jewel. And if you think of Baruka, Baruka has lots of wives. Baruka is now a man of 62, and he has a harem. That is, in his harem, he has got more than a dozen of wives. But he is still ambitious that he will take another wife, and he proposes to marry Siddhi. So this polygamy, the practice of polygamy, is also another example of the marginalization of women. Practice of polygamy, that is, a man takes several women, And a woman does not have any say regarding the matter. A woman cannot stand against this system. She is quite helpless, and nobody will take her side. Everybody will take the side of the man. This is called the marginalization of women. And we find this very practice in this text. So Ole Soyinka, as a great writer, has brought many things out to the attention or to the observation of the readers. Now, I like to make you acquainted with the characters. This drama mostly revolves around these 5 characters. Baroka, the village belle. Sidi, the heroine. Sidi is heroine, but you must not call her a classical heroine. The classical heroine, suppose Jocasta, who we meet in Oedipus Rex, or Rosalind in Assimilation. So those heroines have got some particular features, and they belong to the feudal society, classical society. They have their royal status. They have their magnificence of their status. But Sidi does not possess the magnificence of her status. Sidi does not belong to a royal family. She's an ordinary village girl, and she's the one of the protagonists of this text. So we can call her heroine not in classical sense. She is a heroine. Actually, it is said that in modern age there is no hero, there is no heroine, because heroes and heroines are produced in feudal society. Okay, heroes and heroines are produced in feudal society. But Sidi belongs to capitalistic society. In the capitalistic society, there is no hero, there is no heroines, because capital makes a man coward. If you have a handsome bank balance, you will be a coward, because he will not go to the war then. He will send the other people to the war, but he will not go to the war. Suppose we find, we know the names of our world leaders. Suppose Donald Trump, or before Trump we had Obama or George Bush. These people did never appear in the battlefield. You know, the battlefield in the Middle East. We did never find them fighting. Their hired soldiers fought there. And in your famous drama, Arms and the Man, you know that Bloomsley is a hired soldier. But the man who hires Bloomsley does never come to the battlefield. He is not a hero. So the capitalistic society does not suit the status of a classical hero. In this regard, we cannot call Sidi a heroine, but she is a protagonist of this text, or one of the protagonists of this text. Then Lakunle, the school teacher, he is another protagonist of this text. You cannot call him a hero, okay, in classical sense, but he occupies an important space of the plot of this drama. Then come to Sadiku. Sadiku is Baroka's oldest one, Baroka's oldest wife, and she also plays the role of a matchmaker. She plays the role of a matchmaker. And Ailatu, she is the latest favorite of Baroka. She is the latest favorite of Baroka. Okay, these are the major characters of The Lion and the Jewel. And if you think of the setting, you will find that this drama sets in an African village. This drama sets in an African village. The name of the village is Ilujinle. And this village is located in Nigeria. And the action begins at a marketplace. that Sidi is going back to her house with a pail of water on her head. And while she was passing by a village school, she is encountered by Lahunde, the schoolmaster. And then we find that the action shifts from that very place to the house of Baruka. And if you think of the time, then you find that this drama, the whole action of this drama takes place in a single day. In a single day. That is, the drama begins in the morning. In the morning, Lakunle's attempt of winning the heart of Sidi. We find that Sidi was passing by the school, and Lakunle comes out of his school, postponing his class, and he's trying to court Sidi. The conversation begins. And while they were conversing, suddenly some village young men came there and informed Sidi that her photo has been published in a magazine. Her photo has been published in a magazine, and the stranger who took the snap of Sidi few days ago has come back with that magazine. And very soon we find that Sidi gets very excited. She's suffering from vanity, and she discovers her photo on the cover page of the magazine and in other several pages. And she also discovers the photo of Baruka in another page, and Baruka was standing adjacent to a lat tree. And that very picture of Baruka helps Sidi make a contrast between her photo, that is herself, and Baruka. In her eyes, Baruka is an old and leathery man. But her photo, that is, while she looks at her photo, she falls in love with her own image. She passes her tips of fingers over the photo, and she feels that her skin is very silky. On the other hand, the skin of Baruka is no more skin, it is leather. So she makes a contrast between herself and Baruka. That is called vanity. And she is overjoyed, overexcited. And you know that this very vanity misguides Sidi. This is another important aspect of this text, that Sidi's flaw. What is Sidi's flaw? Flaw means weakness. Sidi's flaw is her vanity. She is overjoyed of her own beauty. And that very excitement has misguided us, and that very excitement has made her fail to understand Sadiku's plan or Baruka's plan. And that very vanity also leads her to Baruka's house, where she falls into the trap of that cunning fox, and she is raped by that man, and she is forced to marry him. Okay. So the drama begins in the morning, and then at noon we find another event, that is, Sidi meets Sadiku, who comes to her with a proposal from Baruka. That is, Baruka intends to marry her, and Sidi at first refuses the proposal, and she says that she is a young lady, and on the other hand, Baruka is an old, important man. For that reason, she will not marry him. Then Sadiku tempts her with another information, that Baruka tonight has arranged a dinner party in honor of Sidi. Sidi has brought prestige, honor to this village. So in her honor, Baruka has arranged a dinner party, and Baruka will be very happy if Sidi attends the party. And we know that Sidi at first refuses the proposal, but while Sadiku concocts another story that Baruka tells her that Baruka at present or recently has lost his sexual potency. So while Sadiku disclosed this very weakness of Baruka to Sidi, then Sidi decides to go and visit Baruka and tease him on this particular aspect. Actually, that was a trap which was set by Baruka, and Sidi failed to understand it. Why? Because of her vanity. She was obsessed in narcissism or vanity. Then night, this is another important section of this drama. You know that this drama is divided into three sections. That is morning, noon, night. So at night we find Sidi visiting Baruka's home, which was lonely, and Baruka just arranged a fake wrestling bout just to show, just to make a display of his manliness to Sidi. So Sidi finds that Baruka is very, very strong, and he defeats the rival repeatedly. And Baruka also gets some time to interpret his position. He says that he is like the school teacher, loves Western culture, Western technology. He wants that Western technology should visit the village. And he also draws Sidi's attention to a machine which can produce a stamp. And Baruka tempts Sidi by saying that he will publish a stamp with the face imprinted on this face of Sidi imprinted on the stamp. So Sidi was overjoyed, and Sidi now finds some likeness, that is, some similarities between Baruka and Lakunle. That is, Lakunle welcomes technology. Lakunle told Sidi that the people would not cultivate the land. The machine, the tractor will cultivate the land. The people would not pestle pepper and other spices. The machine will pestle the spices. And we find that Baruka is echoing Lakunle, that he is not antagonistic to Western technology. He is rather in favor of using Western technology. So all these sayings win the heart of Sidi. And we find that Sidi is tempted by Baruka. And in the next scene, we find that Sidi is weeping, and she says that she is raped by Baruka, and she is also deceived. And then we find some mummers passing by Lakunle. They were playing on their musical instruments, and we, the audience, know that the marriage ceremony between Sidi and Baruka will be held very soon. Lakunle then shows his reaction. He becomes very angry, but we find that his anger does not have any base. He is a very weak person. Why? Because he is not ideologically strong. His identity, cultural identity, is not strong. So how can he fight? He cannot fight against an established system because he does not have a strong ideological basis, a strong cultural basis. His culture is manipulated. His ideology is manipulated. His language is also manipulated. His belief system is manipulated. So how can, with all these limitations, he fight against Baruka? That is the African tradition. He cannot fight against it. So he is defeated. And we find that Baruka marries Sidi. And that is the end of this comedy. As this drama ends with the ringing of marriage bell, we call it a comedy. So it's a very important comedy which tells us the hybridization of African culture. And we must not say that Ole Soyinka is against or antagonistic to Western culture. Ole Soyinka is a man who wants to bring about a synthesis between Western culture and African culture. And that is the reality. We cannot do any other thing beyond this. We have to welcome the changes that are going on all around us, but we should be alert regarding our own identity. And if we can accommodate the other cultures, and if we can keep our own culture intact, and if we can bring about a mutualization between these two, then we can be the citizens of the world. In the globalized world, we do not particularly belong to a particular space. We belong to a particular space, and at the same time, we belong to the whole universe. That is very important. And we can attain this particular thing by cherishing the openness of mind, the broadness of mind. That is very important. So I think you have got some ideas about different aspects of this text. And in my next class, I will tell you about some other aspects of this text regarding its structure, plot construction, and other technical aspects of this text. Okay?